Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our weekly Learn in Your Lunchtime webinar. And once again, I'm thrilled to welcome Tracey Ashington back into the hot seat. And we're going to be talking all about how you can win with LinkedIn. We've been running a series of these webinars really focused on helping you get ready for the workplace and ensure that even though you're still perhaps a full-time student, that you do absolutely everything that you can now so that once you get out into the workplace, you've got your CV ready, you've got your profile ready, you've got a job search strategy ready. These are topics that we've been going through in the previous webinars. And perhaps you are already in the workplace. Perhaps you've been studying, part-time. These topics that we'll be going through are absolutely also so critical for you to get the job that you want, get the promotion that you want, manage your career, and make the progress that you need to. So please do say hi on the chat. And as always, we'll keep that open. We'd like to know where you're coming from today. And once again, we'd also just like to acknowledge, some of the challenges that many of us have had in the country over the last couple of weeks, and also just grateful to so many people who have, stepped up to help rebuild and support those communities. So those of you that are involved with that and you need any help, please use this platform. If you want to raise awareness of anything, please just do let us know in the chat. But today we're talking about LinkedIn, and I'm going to give Tracey a chance just to introduce herself. And if you haven't been around for the last few weeks, Tracey's a top graduate recruiter, but I'm not going to steal her thunder. She can give you a little bit of background. And then Tracey, at the same time, when you're doing your intro, let's just launch into the topic of LinkedIn today, and how people can use that to be successful in the workplace and to build up their profile. And in actual fact, to go looking for jobs. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize the resource that they have at their fingertips. It's a search engine, for jobs that are listed out there. And the degree to which you update your profile and put alerts on different jobs and interact with recruiters and do searches and so on, the more you'll get knowledge of the insights that are out there. All right, guys. So please do just say hi on the chat. And as always, we'll be running a couple of promotions during this hour. We've got the CV Masterclass that we launched this week. Tracey and I are very excited about that. Our first course that we've co-instructed together. We'll be running a live giveaway promotion of that about halfway through the webinar. And I'll put the link there. And our first chat is Asif. So I think Asif had some fantastic news, I guess. Don't want to say too much, but I know that he's been in touch with Tracey and benefited hugely. And Tracey, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. But before we do that, just a reminder, Tracey does this sort of thing professionally. She gives of her time very generously in these webinars for an hour, so take advantage of that. But if, like Asif, you want to book her and pay for a consultation and take advantage on a one-on-one basis where she can look specifically at your own individual situation, then you can get the benefits that Asif has got from that interaction this week. Okay, Tracey, enough from me. Over to you. Bit of an introduction to yourself, and then let's dive into this topic of LinkedIn. Go for it.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. And just to reiterate what Peter said, it's great for us to see who's on the chat. And in particular, if you show us in the chat where you're studying, that's always interesting. So a little bit about me. My background has always been in people recruitment and mainly in graduate recruitment. It's something that's always been very close to my heart. So I love nothing better than being out on campus, speaking to people, giving them tips, helping them to find jobs. And in the past, it's always been working for particular companies where I was recruiting for the organization. But more recently, I have my own consulting business. So what I'm really loving about it is that I don't have to be only, marketing a particular company. I can help people find, jobs, all sorts of jobs across all sorts of different companies and industries. So that's me, passionate graduate recruiter, par none. So let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn, and I read something recently that really sort of touched or hit home. In recent stats, it was found that 98% of hiring managers, or let's say recruiters in general, and I think a large percentage of those will be recruitment agencies, 98% of them are using LinkedIn as their primary way of sourcing talent. And I mean, those numbers speak for themselves. It's grown so much. It's grown so important now that it's almost detrimental not to have a LinkedIn profile. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. During the chat, what we're going to do is, during this hour, I'll talk about the different sections of a LinkedIn profile, and then we can elaborate along the way. But it's really good for us to have some questions so that we make sure that we're answering the sort of things that you want to know. The first thing I'm going to touch on is the most important, should I say, and sometimes the one that people are a little bit unsure about, and that is your photo. So not only is it a chance for you to sort of present yourself and put a face to the name, so it's not just somebody is going to be seeing your name when they search, they're actually going to see a human being and a profile. And that photo is going to come up again and again and again. It is incredibly important. A little bit further on, we'll talk about, as Peter said, the search or the SEOs and the sort. I'm sorry, I'm choking. I think I'm talking too much. So we'll talk about the things you can do to make sure the search engines pick up your profile. And then if you picture as they sort of opening it up and they see, your face and your name, and suddenly I really think at some stage LinkedIn is going to overtake regular CVs as we know it. So I see there's some questions, and then I'll carry on a little more afterwards.
Great. Thank you, Tracey. I totally agree with you. I mean, LinkedIn has been hugely beneficial for me just in terms of networking. And I haven't moved sort of companies many times in my career. I've been fortunate to have sort of long stints at a couple of companies, but certainly people that I've spoken to, have talked about how valuable it is if they understand it and the way that it works to get the insights about the jobs, that are out there. So Tracey, great that we sort of structure it in terms of setting up your own profile and then looking at sort of what is out there. But maybe just given this question from Pumudzo and just reading it out for anybody listening, and we, record these for the podcast. The question is, hello, Tracey and Peter. I'm a recent graduate, and my question is, does one connect with just anyone and accept everyone's invite? And before I ask Tracey to answer that question, just a reminder to everybody, I'll put the link on there to subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot of the questions that are asked in these webinars, guys, we go and we create separate videos for. And we do Q&A videos, 4 or 5 minutes, just going into a little bit more depth on a lot of the questions. Maybe we don't get to them in these webinars. Maybe we do get to them. But you can consume, the answers and the value from these questions on the YouTube channel in the form of those, individual videos. So I'm going to put the link there, and if you guys can just subscribe, that'd be fantastic. But Tracey, then back to you in terms of this question as a recent graduate. When you're connecting with people and growing your LinkedIn network, do you just accept anybody? How do you filter, good and bad connections?
It's a really, really good question. And often people ask me this all the time. And I think there's that people are torn between, should I be very strategic about who I'm adding? So as in people, if I'm looking for a job, recruiters, or if it's that I want to work in this industry, I should be particular about researching, people in the industry, add them with a lot of thought behind it. And then there are other people that will say, I want to have a large network. So not only accepting all the invites you get, but sending out a lot yourself. And why they would maybe like to have the large network is not only to have a lot of recruiters there, but also to have people in the industry whose feeds will come up whose posts will come up on your feed. So it's interesting. It's like you're getting daily news really about people's careers and achievements and all of that. So it depends very much what you're wanting LinkedIn to do. So apparently, again, and I'm quoting figures from recent surveys, apparently there are about 80% of the, no, I'll tell you, it's not that. It's 40% of the people on LinkedIn are hiring managers or recruiters actually looking for people. And then there's 20% of people who are on there who are actually maybe not even maybe not even recruiting, but using it for networking. And then the rest are sort of there on an opportunistic basis. So they like to kind of keep their options open and see what's going on. So people have different reasons, and that, at different stages of their careers as well, things will change. So personally, I don't think if I'm looking at my LinkedIn network, I get a lot of work through LinkedIn. So it's in my best interest to have a broad range of people and connections. One way of using LinkedIn to get you noticed by the people in the jobs that you want to work for is then to go and say, I want to be an engineer, and I'd like to work for these companies. And then you go and you actually, when you click onto the companies, you can follow them. And you go and you add people to your network from those organizations doing the kinds of jobs you want to do. That is really useful. You're going to see what they're saying. You're going to see what they're doing. You're going to see what, posting and so on. So that's not only just linking up with them so that there's a chance they will find you, but that's actually from a research perspective. When it comes to, and I'll just touch on the last little bit, when it comes to accepting the invitations, I don't see that it's going to be detrimental, except if it's somebody scamming or whatever. I personally would, unless there's a reason not to, because it could be that they're seeing potential in the mutual sort of engagement. So I think right now, I would say yes, grow that network. It's becoming more and more important.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tracey. I sort of also tend to agree with you. I mean, you'll assess each connection or invite, that comes up based on what you want to achieve with LinkedIn. And I think, the focus today is winning with LinkedIn in the workplace. So I think you can very quickly pick up if a connection looks a bit dodgy or what I also sometimes get a lot of, and which I actually decline, is I get connections from generic pages or companies. I think it must always be an individual that might be representing a company in a certain role, such as a recruiter or a manager, or just somebody that's in your industry, someone in your field that's looking to get value, perhaps from the content that you share, or perhaps from being available to connect to you in future. So Tracey, I want to pick up on a question just now about selling yourself under the about section, and this is really sort of creating your profile on LinkedIn. But maybe just sort of thoughts from my perspective is that LinkedIn is really just the professional equivalent of a Facebook. And although it emphasizes different features and it does work in slightly different ways, it is primarily a content sharing platform and sort of ecosystem of people interacting. And, the algorithms are based on the crowdsourced opinion of what other people share. And when LinkedIn sees people valuing and liking and commenting on things, then it will promote that in the feeds that everybody else is seeing. So Tracey, you were talking about the feeds that you're seeing. Just because you're connected to people, it won't mean that you see everybody's feed all the time. LinkedIn will also promote things that are trending and topical. For example, I've sort of, shared a couple of posts about what's been happening in the country and the support that people have been given. And that's automatically been sort of shared and promoted and more widely read, etc. So, Tracey, let's then just dive into this fantastic question then, as we look then a little bit, more at profile building in the context of, network building. Because when somebody receives a connection request from you, they will go and check you out. Right. So there's the photo that we spoke about just now. But then, as Tadiwanashe says, how do I sell myself under the about section and the headline? So thoughts on that, Tracey?
Okay. So after the photograph, definitely the headline. That is going to, for anyone who's sort of scrolling through quickly, that is going to be something that's going to catch their eye. So when it comes to the headline, if the default is that what you're currently doing is going to be, what the headline pulls up for you. But instead of just putting a word or a title or a, for example, if you're a graduate, underneath your name, it's like graduate, and then maybe you would say business science. If that's a good one, most people will just say graduate or student. use that line to tell a little bit more about you. So not only, instead of saying graduate, you can say graduate in, and I keep going back to engineering. I don't know why, Peter. It's probably because you studied engineering. But it would be, say, for example, you worked as an intern in engineering, and then perhaps a little dash and say engineer in training or something, interesting about you. So I like the sort of one-liners that say aspiring this, passionate this. So they're getting to see what you're doing. It's not just students. It's about what you're studying and something that you're passionate about. Once again, it's bringing you to life. Now, the next part, so obviously that's the headline. The next part is in the About You section. Once again, throughout your LinkedIn profile, be aware of certain words or tips or skills. Not so much tips, but certain skills that you have, like key words about what you've studied or the skills that you have either within your studies or any VAC jobs or anything, the skills and also the subjects of what you have studied. Because anyone who's doing a quick recruiter doing a quick search is going to use those keywords. What I really think, I don't think that About You should be too long. The moment it starts to look like a paragraph, a recruiter who's screening through like 20, 30, 40 CVs a day for a role, that becomes cumbersome. And then the important stuff is sort of blurred in. I would say very much in that about you, I would keep to the facts. I would say what it is you studied, what it is you're looking for. Highlight sort of experiences maybe where you've done really well. So say, for example, you were invited to be a Golden Key member, etc. So do that there and sort of keep it to about four or five lines as a student. Obviously, once you get more experience, there's going to be a lot more you can put there, but they're going to get the information further down. So do a quick sort of summary in your about section, a summary of all of that in a really punchy, concise way.
I think that's fantastic advice there, Tracey. Appreciate that. Then Sarah asks, should one put their hobbies on LinkedIn? And if so, where? I don't see a section for it. I've only been able to add them under skills. Internet says add to interest, but interests are just pages followed. So I think also now, as we're sort of building out this understanding of the ways in which you create your profile, there are a number of sections in the profile. So just thoughts on hobbies and LinkedIn and building a professional profile on LinkedIn?
So in terms of hobbies, and in fact, as you say, Pete, whilst there aren't always specific fields where you can put that in, I do think it's important to tell a little bit more about yourself, especially when you're students. You need info. You don't have much, work experience, etc. So you do want to add the stuff that you want to beef it up. So where you could put, instead of listing sort of, I love to cook, I love to read or whatever, you can use that when right at the beginning, the About You sort of line. You can say a student, a media student who loves reading in my spare time, and who is an avid follower of Formula One, which is not going to be me. But you see what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be a case of just listing hockey, etc. The other thing is underneath when you list your work experience, there are sections there where you can give more detail and use this. So say, for example, you're listing your qualifications. So you're saying where you're studying at the moment, etc. You're going to always put your subjects. Don't just use the heading. You must put your subjects. And then you can put achievements, involvement. You can put voluntary stuff, all of that in that same section. So you can attribute it to that particular tenure. Then, for example, if you're going to to school. You're going to tell, a little bit about where you matriculated. And underneath that, you can put in sports and things like that you may, ideally stuff that you really are passionate about, and stuff where you've done well. Because in an interview, they could have that in front of them and they say, oh, so what do you think about the guy who won this fight? Or so, and you've put that you love watching boxing, and then you're nabbed. You're
oh my gosh. Tracey, then another question. I mean, just brilliant answers coming through here. And guys, keep those questions coming so we give value to everybody. Louise asks, I'm an aspiring educational psychologist, currently doing honors, but want to work as a teacher first. Do I still mention aspiring educational psychologist? So how much do you sort of give people a window on your own internal ideas and approaches to different careers, or do you not kind of nail your colors to the mast, on one specific track and really sort of drive a clear message about what it is that you do and where you're going, etc.? Because the reality is most people are kind of, still always not 100% sure. So how do you handle that, Tracey?
That is such a good question. Now, once again, by putting it, you're owning it. So I personally would absolutely mention that. You're owning it. You've made a strategic decision. It's something that it's not discounting the fact that you want to be a teacher at all. You can say, I am you could either say, I am aspiring, education, psychiatrist, psychologist, it must be psychologist. I had to guess there. You can say, of course, that you are aspiring to be doing so. You can also say, I love teaching, nothing better for me than to be able to do a bit of both. Or I would definitely put it, the moment you don't disclose something like that, I think afterwards you feeling like, oh, should I mention it in the interview or not? Those are both great things. They don't negate each other at all.
Yeah. I mean, Tracey, just my own sort of litmus test for that question there would be, if I was to post something in the future that I was interested about, and I'm scrolling through and I share something or I see a great article and I want to pop it on my LinkedIn feed, would that be consistent with my profile? Would that be consistent with something that people had read about me by browsing my profile, or something that I had liked previously, etc.? So when you say own it in the sense of not just putting it on your profile, but owning the sort of ecosystem of information and topics and articles and blog posts that you might be sharing as part of your activity on LinkedIn in the future. Because, I mean, Louise, if she sees something about educational psychology, she might then think to herself, should I share this? Because I haven't told everyone on LinkedIn that I'm still aspiring educational psychology. But if you own it, you put it out there, people absolutely 100% respect that we've all got multiple interests. And when they see that, they see, oh, fantastic. Louise is, teaching, but she's still an aspiring educational psychologist. That's an interesting article, etc. And I think it deepens the connections. I think it builds trust. And I think in any of these social media platforms, and although they do get abused and there are checks and balances in place for that, the vast majority of interactions and valuable insights that you get from these platforms come from trust, and come from the way that we use it with the right intentions. And I firmly believe that the successful platforms largely use those algorithms to benefit everybody. So when your profile is consistent with the content that you're sharing and the content that you're liking, I think that builds you as a trusted member of the platform, which I think will only benefit you in the future, regardless of however it is that you're using it. Great question here, and just more sort of generically, maybe getting into some of the sort of job search strategies that we might be wanting to talk about on LinkedIn. But the question here is, I've been working part-time throughout my degree and my experience accumulates to roughly 4 years. However, I'm still struggling to land graduate jobs or entry-level jobs. I'm going to graduate soon. Now, just on that point, we've had Kathy Sims here from Segir previously talking about the demand for specific graduate degrees and qualifications. And I'll put a link there to that webinar with Kathy Sims, because she really has her finger on the pulse in terms of what her network of graduate employers are looking for. So that would be quite a useful one for you to go through. I don't know what specific qualification or field this person is in, but Tracey, back to you. And just in terms of starting to think about a job search strategy on LinkedIn, maybe let's just answer this question and help this person, from a LinkedIn perspective.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, as you say, this is a little sort of off topic, but it's something that I reckon many of you are experiencing. There's that sort of gray area between having had some work experience or internships being a good thing, and that some businesses will say, oh, great, makes the candidate more marketable. And then there are others where they have a grad program and they stipulate that you shouldn't have more than a certain amount of work experience, because otherwise you aren't really going to be somebody who is joining at 21 when they've just recently graduated and have had no work experience. And then you have somebody who's graduated and has 4 or however many years sort of. I think when they normally cut it off at maybe a year tops, if you're studying at the same time, that still would be considered a grad. But if you've got a few more years than that, I'm not 100% sure that you would want to go in as a grad. So as much as you may say, I really need the job, Tracey, I will be a grad if I need to. Or else you're saying, I really want to be a grad because effectively I am. I've been working, on the side. If you do go in on a grad program when you have some work experience, it's not that you mind, it's not even that they mind, but it's almost like you've got some skills that make sense to use, and to give you credit for, and to go into a role directly, so you're not having to sort of rotate around and find your feet. Now, what I would do is it's very hard, as Peter said, it's very hard to say specifically without knowing, what it is and whether it was relevant work experience or whether it was just sort of incidental work to help pay for your studies, etc. But remember that title, the headline at the top. That's a great way for you to say exactly what it is. It can be like recently graduated, had great experience as an intern. People know that many of you guys do have to do some sort of work to fund your studies, and maybe you couldn't afford to do, a full-time degree. So I actually would see it as a good thing to say, okay, I studied via UNISA, and while I did that, I got some work experience. I think that's a great candidate for me.
Yeah,
Personally.
great. Yeah, fantastic, Tracey. And then Simeon just pointing out that I spoke about sharing and liking posts. So yeah, good observation there. How important is this to building a good profile, Tracey?
It really is. And Pete, it's funny, the more you and I work together, the more interesting it is in that we think so similarly. So you stole my thunder earlier when you were talking about SEOs. But we just think so similarly on this. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was what you touched on about sharing and, liking posts and so on. And I know you'll have some stuff to add. I mean, this is something you do really, really well. I think that it's not only, so yes, I think that you must, but not randomly so. Like on Instagram, when I see my child on TikTok just liking, I'm like, really? Be strategic about what you're liking, because the algorithms are also going to pick up on that. And then also it's going to sort of build up your interest or substantiate your kind of profile, the kinds of things you like, etc. In terms of sharing posts, again, I think that it's a good way. So when I tell people about LinkedIn, I say, go in, find the company you want to work for. Then you go and like their page. Then if you click people, it's going to bring up the people in that organization. Be strategic, add the recruiters from, send a link. You don't even have to do a note all the time, but if you would like to, you can. add some of the senior people, go and see what they are posting, and then go and see the kinds of things that they're doing and what they're interested in. Then find their competitor company, and you can always find that on the side. It will prompt, similar companies and similar people, and you go and look at what they're doing. And ideally, I actually even Google who is their competitor. I actually go and look, and it comes up with their top 5 competitors. Go follow them as well. Go share their stuff, because you're gonna pick up on what trends are in the market, and they're gonna see that you have an authentic interest in it. So yes to sharing, yes to liking, but not just randomly. Do it like as part of your strategy.
Yeah, and Tracey, just to add in there as well, I think, Simeon, to answer your question, I think the importance would be in terms of just that activity, because if you look down the profile, you'll see a section there called activity. So that activity contributes to your profile, and LinkedIn builds up through its algorithms quite an extensive definition of you as an entity on its platform. And it uses that activity to build that profile. So when you are interacting in the future and putting up alerts for jobs and profiles, etc., it will use all the information that it's got about you. Just like when you use Uber regularly, and it'll see the routes that you like to take. It'll see your preference for the car, and the type of driver that you like. And then, the more the content that it presents to you on your news feed will be based on the profile and the history that it has built up of you based on what you've liked and shared previously. So your activity on the platform will determine also what you see and the value that you get from it, both in terms of just scrolling and having a feed and having some interest, but also in terms of an active strategy of getting jobs and connecting with companies, as Tracey has mentioned there. Tracey, I did just want to take a quick ad break, and let's just show you what you'll get in our new CV Masterclass course, because we did add in there quite an extensive lesson or demonstration, and I actually used my own profile on LinkedIn to take you through the steps of setting up your profile, and then give you some thoughts about how to go and interact with other profiles and go and look for jobs, etc. So just really quickly to give you a sense of what is in there, and we've had a couple of questions today about it. If you hop onto the course, which we'll make available to you now, you'll find this lesson, and it goes step by step through how you set up your profile. So you can see mine there, and I go through, so you can see all the sections there: the intro, the about, the featured. And I scroll down through it, and there's that dashboard. So you see the activity there underneath. You can see then the followers and what you've been doing and liking, and you can see how you experience and how you add experience on there. And as you obviously build up a career and you build up more roles and positions, that'll get more extensive. And really the context of showing LinkedIn in the CV Masterclass course is obviously to create valuable information for you to extract onto your CV. And so, Tracey, maybe if you want to just mention the CV Masterclass that we've launched this week and the incredible uptake that we've had to it. I'll post a free access enrollment link for you guys to go and jump on there and take action straight after this webinar. And just a reminder that inside that CV Masterclass, you'll get this LinkedIn lesson. And the focus there really is to use LinkedIn to help drive and improve your CV over time. But Tracey, just touch on the CV Masterclass, and then perhaps bring LinkedIn as a source of valuable and ongoing information for you to update your CV, or to perhaps generate a CV using that feature in LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I don't know that many people know, and we shouldn't be selling this, Pete, because then they're not going to need our course. But you can actually create a CV within LinkedIn, and it's not bad actually. And so that's something. Go and play around with it. I haven't used it personally, but I do know there's the option to create. I think it's a PDF. But in terms of our CV workshop, so I know, when I was first thinking, when Peter and I first started talking about it, I looked online, and there's so many people doing sort of CV, giving CV advice and doing all sorts of CV. I thought, well, are we going to be giving something different? But it was so interesting, was so valuable, because everyone's going to have a different idea of what a perfect CV looks like. And because I've been in recruitment and grad recruitment for 20 odd years, I was able to share the questions that I commonly get. So when people come to me, I actually don't really do people's CVs. I just send them a template, because I like a very simple CV, and mine isn't actually that great, but that's for another day. But I looked at it as having been a recruiter, and what kind of things worked for me, and what kind of things stood out, and what kind of made a CV different to the others, the other options out there. And we were pretty impressed. We actually, I think we've given some really good advice. So definitely, if I were you, I endorse it. I think you'll learn a lot from us. Remember, so yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So we've really approached it as having been in the industry, having worked a lot with students and so on. And that's why I think it's so powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. So just scrolling through the landing page here for the course, we'll give you a bit of an introduction there. We'll explain there's a workbook and extensive worksheets. There's a whiteboard lesson. You can introduce yourself to other fellow students. And then getting started with your amazing CV. And then Tracey really takes you through the core lessons here, what to include, what not to include, how to lay out your CV, and then the main section. So we go through education, work experience, skills, other aspects of your CV, hobbies, social work, references, length, format. And then Tracey, you mentioned that template that we've developed and you've used over your sort of 20 years or so, in which we make available in the course. And then what's a real bonus of this course is that you can actually submit your CV as part of the assignment and get some feedback from Tracey on that. And then, as you mentioned, Tracey, we took the CV webinar that we ran a few weeks ago, and we extracted a couple of questions that people had asked there. So, for example, again, should I add a photo on your CV? Do I always have to update my CV based on job descriptions that are advertised? And then the last sort of major section really is, again, this LinkedIn top tips. I also go through the Nova resume tool, which I use for my CV. And there, obviously, you can see our two profiles there on the course. So I'm going to pop a free access link into the chat now for everybody to get access to that, and it'll be absolutely awesome for us to see you in the course there. And Tracey's waiting in anticipation to get your CV so that she can give you some feedback. And that, of course, as always with these webinars, is completely free for you guys to get access to, and you can share that link, make that available to your friends. And do check out Tracey's profile. And I'll also put there Tracey's website. That's also in the course and available for you to go and have a look in there as well. So lots of value coming through to you from the webinar today. All right, so let's just quickly pick up on this question from Tabello. Does one need to regularly add an updated CV to keep it searchable and recent on platforms like LinkedIn and other job searches? That's a good question. I mean, LinkedIn, if you keep your profile updated, as we show you in the course in that LinkedIn demonstration, that will be the most up-to-date version of your entire work history and your profile. What we teach in the course, and I'll ask Tracey to elaborate on a bit just now, is that a CV is a specific presentation of specific aspects of your work history in a much more shorter, condensed format. So if you create a CV Word document on your computer, that's not going to be accessible by people searching on LinkedIn. That's only going to be visible to people, obviously, that you send as part of a job application. But the idea is that you use LinkedIn as a source of information for you to keep a CV updated. So the information will be the same in both places, but the CV that we teach in the course and the template that Tracey provides is quite a structured, specific layout and has, quite good usage in the context that Tracey's got a lot of experience in. So Tracey, your thoughts on Tabello's question there?
So Tabello, so obviously you want to keep it updated, but I think also what you may have meant is by regularly updating, does it mean it's going to sort of come up more? Or perhaps if somebody has looked for your CV before and now it's changed, you're wondering if so on. So I actually, and this is LinkedIn aside, so LinkedIn, you can keep updated. Somebody's looking for someone with your skills. It may come up today. They're not going to, but even if they don't contact you today, when they look again, they're going to see you're updated. They're not going to, they're going to see whatever's current and updated being online, versus with your CV, it's actually, the CV that you're sending out. I've got a sneaky little tip. So when you guys are sending your CV to a company, it's super important that you can just change 2 words on it. You can just update it slightly. But it's really important to stay front of mind with these recruiters. And there's no better way than to say, "Dear Tracey, I have updated my CV, so please find attached." It's like, it's a little bit sneaky, and but it works, right? You've got to make sure that you're on them in the back of their mind at the very least. And the other thing is, when, for example, you've applied via Leaply or LinkedIn or whatever, I always advise people to follow up with the recruiter directly in an email, attaching their CVs. So don't feel bad to do that. They may say, go and do it via Leaply, which you mustn't bypass that. But it's really good to then send the email to the graduate recruiter and say, "I have applied on Leaply for this graduate role. However, I want to make sure that you notice me. Please find attached." Okay, so you're making sure that you're in the back of their minds. There have been times over the years where there'll be someone who maybe we didn't manage to hire at the time, or they were unsuccessful, but they stayed in touch with me. And, there was some, like every few weeks, they would just be reminding me. And then it was late on a Sunday, and one of the hiring managers phoned me and said, "Tracey, I really need someone to start tomorrow." And there was a kid who I'd kept on telling, "Don't give up, don't give up." I phoned him. He was in Pietermaritzburg. I said, "Get in a taxi, get to Joburg. You can sleep on a friend's couch. I don't care." And it was just because at that moment, he had stayed in my mind, not only just updating his CV, but just sort of engaging all the time. So long story short, so in terms of LinkedIn, absolutely, you've got to keep updating it. In terms of your actual CV, update it, obviously, as you're going to, doing more and more things, but just update it and resend it as a way of staying front of mind.
And I think, Tracey, just to build on that topic of staying, in people's minds and linking it back to the earlier question from Simeon about liking and sharing content. And I do so agree with you. It's often, even when you've been regretted for a job, for example, that actually that's when you should continue building the relationship. And, once you've had that conversation with the recruiter, and you check out, maybe they've shared something or they've written something on LinkedIn, and you make a comment on there, you're still top of mind of that person. And although you weren't top of the list for that job, you'll probably be number 2 or 3 or 4 for the next job that comes up. And if you like and comment on their posts, obviously not doing it too obviously and spamming them, etc., but when they then think about the next possible candidates, as you've mentioned just now, they might then connect. "Simeon, I remember he applied for a job and he liked on my post last night," and you connect those dots. And so many times, it's that fortuitous link that gets then created for you, and you're just increasing your chances of those links being created for you and to your benefit, which I think is incredibly important. And then just to remember, in the LinkedIn demonstration in the CV Masterclass course, which I didn't quite scroll through just now when I did the demo of the video, there's a later section in that demonstration lesson of how to go look for jobs on LinkedIn. And using my profile, I go and search and I see what kind of jobs comes up based on my profile and the pattern that LinkedIn has established for me. But Tracey, then let's just change gears a little bit to that job search strategy on LinkedIn. And I mean, you mentioned earlier the high percentage of recruiters actually going onto LinkedIn and looking for people there. And I know, I mean, First Rand, we're putting a lot more time and effort into using LinkedIn as a source of candidates, etc. But from a recruiter's perspective, now tell us and give us the inside track of what are they doing to go onto LinkedIn, and then how will that help people on the call today understand how to position themselves better in terms of seeing and tagging and getting, alerts, etc., for those jobs that are posted on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So, with recruiters, as you say, at First Rand, you guys are doing it. A lot of companies are using LinkedIn. I would say most companies are using LinkedIn, and as I said earlier, as their primary sort of tool for recruiting. And that's because when you are hiring a large group of people, for example, or even, I mean, let's face it, even one, when you're doing it via a recruitment agency, you are paying a placement fee. Whereas if you buy a LinkedIn license, I guess they see more value. I mean, personally, there's an agency adds a lot more value, than just doing your own search. And even the agencies are using LinkedIn as well. But so companies want to sort of take control over their hiring. And so what they will do is, this is where that keywords thing comes up. They'll put in a search, they will use some words, and it doesn't even have to be titles or specific. It can be your degree, or it could be subjects that you've, things that you've studied. And that's why those keywords are really important, and that kind of detail. So remember how I said you should add your subjects. If somebody's looking at your LinkedIn profile, don't assume that because they saw you did journalism that they know what the subjects were, what specialization or whatever. You can even put your dissertation or your research topic into your LinkedIn underneath that section. So what happens is, a lot of the people, when I'm looking through LinkedIn, a lot of people just put the title of whatever it is, or the name of the degree, and they don't put anything else underneath. The things that they have underneath are often the things that are going to pull you up, so the skills that are linked to that kind of job. So definitely put as much detail as you can. Remember, not paragraphs of detail. Keep it, it can be bullet points, etc. But add some sort of juice there, because your CV is going to be a lot more likely to come up. As a recruiter, I would look, if it's someone with experience, I obviously would look for sort of people in that with those kinds of job titles. If it's a student, obviously we're going to be looking at what degree you are doing. But remember, if you've just said a diploma in communications, that's the communications is going to be one reason for you to come up. Whereas if you say under communications, you say public relations, editing, you're going to add a whole plethora of skills. That's going to mean a lot more people are going to see your CV, and the people that do are going to see a lot more of what your skills are.
Tracey, I just very quickly wanted to build on what you were saying by just sharing this LinkedIn demonstration video again. And I actually go into that job search feature on LinkedIn. And you can see right at the top there that, when I search for jobs, it shows me back jobs based on your profile. And this is what we've been talking about today, is that, as you invest time in creating your profile, so LinkedIn will become more useful for you, because it'll be more targeted in terms of taking what the recruiters are looking for in their job postings and matching that to the skills that you have on your profile. And a very important part of LinkedIn's algorithm is the endorsements. So when you put skills up on your LinkedIn profile and other people endorse you for those skills, that increases the weighting of that part of your profile. So if you put, like Tracey said, that you have communication skills, but then that is your most endorsed skill by other people on your profile, then you will be more targeted for communications jobs. So one of the things that we teach in the course in this demonstration lesson is to go and ask for recommendations and ask for people to endorse you on skills. And in the video, you'll see what my endorsed skills rankings are, which sometimes doesn't correlate with what you think your primary skills are. And it's so important to get that crowdsourced sense of you and the value proposition that you offer, because it might be slightly different to what you think you have to offer. And that's just the value of the platform and the access that you have to so many people out there who have worked with you and can recommend and endorse you for specific skills. Just to emphasize again, Tracey, in the context of job search, that spending time on your profile and getting connections to endorse you and make recommendations for you on your profile will increase the value that you get from the job search feature in LinkedIn. Tracey.
Absolutely. And it's something I don't actually, I don't ever really ask someone to go and endorse me. But I do know that if you have endorsements for whatever it is that you are good at, when people pick up your CV, obviously you saying you can do this stuff and you're good at it, etc. But endorsements are definitely going to make it hold more weight, right? If other people are also saying you're good at something, so I think it's something that I should do more myself.
Yeah, I just was looking here. So this is the endorsement skills and endorsement section. So if you put the skills up there, then people will either voluntarily, or if you ask them to, come and make endorsements of those skills. So I've got endorsements for business process change management strategy. Those are the top 3 that are showing on my profile. So that's just then, I think, a hugely valuable aspect that you can potentially think about adding onto your LinkedIn profile. Then Pumutsu's got a great question here. What do recruiters look for when they look at your LinkedIn profile?
Well, Pomozzo, I love the photo that I'm seeing here next to you, next to your name. I think it's a fantastic photograph. So I was listening to somebody speak recently about LinkedIn profile pictures, and I actually watched a little and I clicked off it because this particular lady was she was recommending that you use a photo of you doing something that you love doing. And I thought, no, that's perfect for Facebook. But for LinkedIn, you want to look like somebody that they could say, for example, it's you want to look, this is your professional kind of brand. And it's not what you look like, it's the way in which you position yourself. And I love the way that you've sort of crossed your arms there. You're looking like somebody in an office environment rather than rock climbing. They also say that you should have a plain background. So I'm not a good example of that now. A plain background. And then also that it's sort of, you must be able to see some of the background around it. So it's not just your face, but also that you don't have to show much more than sort of from the waist up. This is a nice tip for making you look skinny. If you cross your arms and you turn and then you look over your shoulder, it's also quite powerful. It shows that you got this together. The other thing is, I say, keep the clothing. And again, I'm not a great example today, but keep the clothing simple as well. And also smile. It makes a big difference in showing. I mean, it's not like you're not smiling, Pumutso. So it's not. I love your pic, but do look sort of engaging and look like kind of a nice person. I think that would work well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tracey. And guys, if you want to connect with Tracey, I put her website there and it's in the chat as well. So please do get in touch with her and you can have a one-on-one individual consultation. I think people that have done that and invested the time and money to do so have really benefited and seeing the results. I mean, I just scroll through the testimonials that Tracey gets of students and job seekers that she's been able to help. And she is so indeed passionate about them, and not just doing that consultation, but then following up and, getting the results. And we spoke about Asif at the beginning of the session and the positive news and, the work that him and Tracey have been doing in the last week or so, I think has really boosted, his job prospects. And Pumutsu, yeah, absolutely. No, it's a real pleasure. And I sort of certainly agree with what Tracey said there. I mean, you certainly have that professional, and again, it's just a different network. Your social Facebook profile can be a lot more relaxed and private, and different, but the one that you use for LinkedIn, must certainly be appropriate to job seekers and people that are looking to network with you, to get professional advantage by having you in their network. Last few minutes then, Tracey, Sarah just asked about the privacy aspects of LinkedIn and whether you should keep parts of it private or make all of it public. And then what the difference is between somebody that you are connected with on LinkedIn and how much they can see versus somebody that's not connected with you on LinkedIn and how much they can see, and what of those security settings you've got control of, etc.
So, and in fact, Cindy also similar kind of point there in her question. It's about what is, like, can I say my current company, or how much? Now, this is a virtual profile, guys. So this is, your stuff is out there. It's not, if you're wanting to keep certain things private and so on, then it's not, that's not what LinkedIn is good for. Put the stuff on LinkedIn. It does depend a little bit on whether you have certain memberships and so on as to what you can see. And in your case, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it. You're students, you got bursaries, you don't always have the money to pay for the premium access. The recruiters are going to pay for it because they need to see the stuff. But I wouldn't, if there's some information that you feel like maybe you shouldn't put, it's fine to say, to Cindy's point, it would be fine to say, I don't know why a company wouldn't really want you to put it there, but that they would have their reasons for it. It would be fine to say leading furniture manufacturer, and then your job title, and then all of your responsibilities. So it could be for that, and then if they want to know, you can always elaborate afterwards. In terms of should I keep stuff private, I think about what the motivation for that would be. And if there's a reason why it may not be appropriate, then potentially it's not something that should be on LinkedIn. Or else, if it's important to have it, but it's risky, then keep it vague. They're still going to see you doing this job in this industry. They're going to see your responsibilities. Just take away the company name.
Tracey, then probably just the last question we've got time for today. Simeon, just a follow-up question. It feels like we're in Parliament here, Tracey, but great, Simeon. Thanks. Appreciate the engagement today. And he asks, is it then a good idea to share the results of, for instance, LinkedIn skills assessments, or does this sharing seem like a lack of humility? And I mean, let's broaden the question, Tracey, to this issue of self-promotion. And just sort of a little bit of the duty of care that we have to both contribute to the platform and give people value. I always say, I think self-promotion or promoting of a webinar like we're having today, or an article that you've written, or an online course that you want to make available, or a consultation or a service that you want to provide. I mean, I think, if you can combine that with value, so if somebody gets value from a post or something that you've shared, whether it's the results of an assessment or whether it's an insight that you've got from something you've learned today, and then you couple that together with what you're offering, then it's not blatant self-promotion just for the sake of spamming everybody with what you've got to offer. And if you think about LinkedIn, they always just show the first 3 lines of a post, and then obviously the link and the article, etc. And when I share something, I always try and put something of value in those first 3 lines, and then somebody will click see more. I like what this guy is talking about. Let me go and have a look a bit more. And then further down there, you can say, okay, by the way, guys, I've got this stuff, I've got this article written. But, if you just put that in people's faces the whole time, you might just get a little bit of a reputation for just constantly sharing stuff that's in your interests. And I think to Simeon's point here, you do want to have a little bit of that humility, but also professionally. I mean, own the space, contribute to it because people want to hear from you. Tracey, your thoughts on that balance to strike in terms of sharing stuff on LinkedIn?
So I personally think that you are building a brand. You are self-promoting, and I don't see it as having a lack of humility, because if they don't know the stuff about you, where's that going to, how's that going to work? So I don't, and I also think we tend to be more, I find it very hard to sort of self-promote. And especially I find students will say like, well, isn't it, if I'm following up with someone, am I not going to be annoying? So I think we do on the side of, maybe a little overcautious. I definitely think if it's relevant and it's something you did well at, absolutely share it. You need the job, right? Do whatever it takes. I reckon somebody will tell you if you seem a little bit vain. They'll tell you, one of your mates will tell you to take it off.
Exactly. And Tracey, I'm going to ask you to do some self-promotion now because you're an expert in CVs. We've got the CV Masterclass. I've put the link in the chat there now. It's free for everybody. So straight after this webinar, they can hop on there and go and enroll, and they'll have lifetime access to it. So Tracey, in 30 seconds or less, give us a branded promotion of the CV Masterclass and the expertise that you make available to everybody in that online course.
So you see, when I'm doing an interview, I say to people, come, bring the deal, come, I want to hear. But then when it comes back at you, it's hard. So what I think is really, really good about that is, as I said earlier, it's relating to actual experience. So for 20 years, I've screened thousands of CVs. And I've seen what works and I've seen what doesn't work. And even if it works, I've seen what makes things amazing in terms of a CV. So that's where I think the real value is. It's coming from experience. It's something I'm really good at. I think I give some good tips, as does Peter.
Thanks, Tracey. So absolutely. I mean, and there are 3 hours worth of those tips and lessons and insights that Tracey and I have packaged in from our combined 40 years effectively of experience in the workplace. Tracey is a full-time graduate recruitant and coach. So go and take advantage of that, enroll, and we'll see you in the course. Tracey, once again, for a fulfilling, wonderful, insightful session, which we've certainly got social proof of from everybody saying, how valuable it has been. Thank you for your time, Tracey. Have a good weekend. And to everybody else, have a fantastic weekend as well. Tracey, cheers. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Pete.